June is Men's Health Month, and we want to highlight some of the youngest men in our area. The studies are clear. Boys feel left behind, and women now outpace men when it comes to college attendance. Of all high school graduates, about 57% of men seek higher education, compared to 2/3 of females. A higher percentage of boys are diagnosed with a mental, emotional, behavioral, or developmental problem, and young men are more likely to self-harm. In 2023, the suicide rate for males was 21 for every 100,000, compared to women's 5 per 100,000. So what's behind these trends, and how is our community rallying around young boys to better support them? Let's go on the record.
You're watching On the Record on WPBF 25.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Felicia Rodriguez. When it comes to the mental health of kids, and particularly boys, it can be challenging as parents and mentors to know the right things to do and say. Our Shane Wright sat down with a local psychiatrist who explains why this is.
At 15 years old, Zach Lemelski, a freshman at King's Academy, has his plate full.
So you're kind of a busy kid at 15 years old, right?
Yes.
From football to taekwondo and jiu-jitsu, even acting to go along with his schoolwork and chores at home, it's a lot.
This week I was sick and I had so much homework I had to make up, and I just felt like so stressed about everything. I just felt like I could never really get through it all. I just feel so overloaded with it all.
We all struggle. We all have some similar struggles or overlaps, but there are some unique struggles in adolescence.
Psychiatrist Dr. David Husted with Psychiatry of the Palm Beaches says one thing to remember when it comes to the mental health of teenagers is just that. They're still just teenagers.
They don't yet know who they are. Adolescence, it's actually a very normal part of adolescence, is that you're trying to identify who you are. You're seeking your identity.
According to the World Health Organization, globally, 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds experiences a mental health disorder. And the third leading cause of death among those aged 15 to 29 years old, suicide.
Since they don't know who they are, they haven't fully formed their identity, they're very insecure. If you think about it, the more we know who we are, the more secure we become in our own skin.
He says warning signs a child could be struggling include them being irritable, moody, a lot of turmoil and drama in their friend group. But as a parent, here's what you can do.
Be aware, be connected, make yourself available, talk to your teens, be present.
And when having those tough disagreements, remember, you are the adult.
We're modeling proper behavior. Sometimes emotions are high and tempers can flare. And as I tell my patients all the time, and I tell myself, these moments are momentary. Let's win this moment. And winning this moment doesn't mean winning the argument. It's managing this moment well.
And that was our Shane Wright with that story. Lots to get to on this topic. And joining me now to continue our discussion is Brianna Robinson. She is the Resilience and Wellness Program Manager for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Palm Beach County. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We appreciate that. We can't really have this conversation, though, about boys' mental health without talking about the stigma that's really associated with it when it comes to the stigma around mental health and boys and not talking and sharing about their feelings and their emotions.
That's good. So what I will say is, unfortunately, there has been this social expectation for young boys to be strong, but we've kind of miscued what strong means. So we teach young boys that they can't be emotional, they can't express their emotions. And so somehow we have tied showing emotions as a feminine trait. So a lot of times young boys revert to anger, which is a secondary emotion. So sometimes it's kind of walking them through those big feelings and really trying to dig to say, your anger is valid, but at the root of that, what are you feeling? Because kids are sponges, right? So we can't really expect them to know how to manage tough feelings. It's kind of like saying, just get on the bike and ride. Like, no, they need to be guided. They need to have someone walking with them through those tough feelings. So I think having a conversation starts at home and with the adults that are advocates and stakeholders that affect our kids on the daily, especially our young boys. We need to really focus on breaking down that stigma and that expectation that they can't have the fluidity of emotions that women are given.
Yeah,
So
that
we have to
anger,
start there. Yeah.
I mean, like, seems to come from, they're suppressing those emotions and
Yes.
those feelings, and they really need to be able to talk about them. So the
Yeah.
consequences of this really can be dire, like you said, because they're expressing it in an anger. They're misdirecting that. Men are more likely to take their own lives, we've learned. Talk about the importance then of starting early when it comes to teaching these young boys how to deal with
Yeah.
these emotions and how to share and express themselves properly.
Yeah, so I think it starts with creating the space to have those conversations. So one of the things that I used to hear growing up, I had a lot of male friends, right? So we've had these conversations. It's don't cry, you're acting like a girl, right? So again, going back to tying that stigma that showing emotions is a feminine trait.
It's a weakness.
Yes, right, correct. But really, vulnerability is a power. It's a superpower, right? Because we're creating this space to say, hey, I see you, right? So in this space, it's not about male, it's not about women. It's really about you as an individual and what are your needs.
And you bring up a big point, because I know, being raised in a Hispanic family.
Oh, girl, talk about it.
Yes, things are different.
Very, yeah.
Your dad is going to talk to the daughter differently than he talks to
Correct.
the son. And I
Correct.
remember things that my dad said to my brother versus me, and how he talked to him if he got emotional about
Yep.
something. So talk about how culture and socioeconomic status plays a huge role in how the parents were raised and
Yeah.
then how they're raising their kids.
Yeah, so my biggest thing is when I talk about family dynamics, my biggest thing is breaking generational curses, right? And so when we have those conversations, sometimes it's about like breaking or beating poverty, but really generational curses can be anything that have been passed down through the generations, right? So again, going back to, your dad speaking to your brother a certain way versus how he spoke to you. Again, it's that like expectation that you're gonna be tough, like you don't have time to be angry or upset. And I think little boys and little girls, we are raised and conditioned a certain way. So from a young age, little boys are taught you don't have time to be emotional. You need to grow up and you need to be a provider one day. And so talking to, let's say, socioeconomic problems or challenges, sometimes there's certain populations that it's not that they don't want help, but there's no access to resources. There's families that want help, but they may not have transportation. They may not have access to the resources. And sometimes, again, it's just, they simply just don't know, right? So we're expecting families to figure it out, but not sending help to them, right? So I always emphasize it's not equality, but equity.
All right, we're going to talk a lot more about this, Brianna, so I appreciate you
Yeah.
staying with us. The conversation continues after this break, how the community is stepping up to better support young men and boys. We'll be right back.
You're watching On the Record on WPBF 25.
Thanks for staying with us. We are continuing our conversation this morning on young boys and their mental health. Your community obviously can play a big role in helping kids
Yes.
succeed in this arena. No one knows that better than Brianna Robinson. And Brianna, you work at the Boys and Girls Club. You are the Resilience and Wellness Program Manager for the Boys and Girls Club of Palm Beach County. And we appreciate you being here, because you
Thank you for
really
having
are
me.
adding so much to this conversation. So thank you. To start, as we've been saying, stigma really plays a big part in this. When you talk about mental health and boys, there's really a big discrepancy.
Yes.
Girls are a lot more willing to open up and talk about
Yeah.
their feelings and their emotions. Talk a little bit, if you will, about how the Boys and Girls Clubs of Palm Beach County really fights back and works to make a difference in this arena.
Yeah, so In my department, we basically have a bunch of like programs and curriculums that we flow through all of our 20 sites, right? So essentially it's finding curriculums that we can tailor to different targeted areas. So like identifying emotions, being able to choose positive coping skills, right? So we don't negate from the fact that anger is an emotion. We allow them to process through that, but also in a healthy way. So we have curriculums that touch on CBT, which is cognitive behavior theory. And so we just kind of deliver different curriculums that touch on different things in a way that our kids can understand it, right? So we speak their language. We add in mental health literacy to kind of teach them like about, you know, the language that you're supposed to use and all these different things. We bring in the professionals to come in and speak to our kids. So we have tons of partnerships that we bring in with therapists. We work with personalized RBTs that are, you know, assigned to some of our members. And we've kind of just cultivated a space for those conversations to take place. Yeah.
Now, you oversee all 20 clubs of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Palm Beach County. Are you seeing perhaps an increase in awareness?
Yeah.
You know, is that moving in the right direction?
It is.
Between the parents and the kids?
Yes. So I oversee the program in all of the 20 clubs that we oversee in the Palm Beach County area. We definitely are seeing the boat slowly but surely moving. So we definitely incorporate parent nights once a month in our sites where we encourage parents to come out and to have those conversations with us, right? Because if we're working with our babies and we're teaching them the right things, we want to know that we're equipping the parents as well. So when they see that shift, because they do, when they see the shift in their babies, they're going to come asking questions, right? So essentially we create that space for the families and the parents to come to get that knowledge, to get the skills that we were talking about, right? Because no one is teaching us these things, right? So essentially we're just creating space for not only the kids, but also the guardians that are responsible for them and having those conversations. So it's really a beautiful thing to see. I will say we just started a new partnership with another organization, Active Minds, and we just had a wrap-up meeting with them, and they were telling us, like, you know, based on the surveys, your kids really know their stuff.
That's wonderful to see the needle moving
in
the direction it should be. What can parents or caregivers who are watching do if they suspect that their children may be having some type of mental health issues?
I would say first start with yourself and give yourself grace. Because we're all learning, right? We're all building the plane as we're flying it.
Right.
And so give yourself grace for the things that you don't know and celebrate the things that you do know. I would definitely also encourage maybe speaking to a pediatrician, speaking to the teacher, and going with an open heart and open mind to hear what other adults are recognizing and seeing, and to know that there's nothing wrong with your baby, right? Like even if there is a mental health challenge or something that they need support in, just know that there are resources available. And so you honor your child by showing up in that space and also advocating for them by also saying, baby, it's okay to be different, and we're gonna take care of you the way that you need to be taken care of. So it's just about being open to hearing and to learning and unlearning some of the unhealthy things that we might hold on to from our childhood, for sure.
Well, if anybody watching wants to get involved with the Boys and Girls Club, how can they do that?
So I would definitely say we're in the heat of summer right now. So the best thing to do would be to call our main office. We are at 800 North Point. So our administrative office is located off 45th. So give us a call. We'll, look up your address. We'll tell you, which club is closest to you so we can get them signed up. I would also say right now, just, also to help us advocate for our funding. 21st Century is something that's kind of up in the air right now with our funding for our organization. So we're just asking parents to reach out to us to help us advocate for those so that we can continue to do the beautiful work that we're doing in our organization and across Palm Beach County, because the kids need us and we want to be there, right? But we're going to need some hands to row the boat as well.
Brianna, you're doing great work. Brianna Robinson, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Well, still ahead, we can't talk about mental health without talking about technology. The local group working to get smartphones out of the classroom and helping kids and parents thinking smarter about their devices. Thanks for staying with us. We are continuing our conversation on young boys and their mental health. We can't have this conversation without talking about technology, and here to help me do that is Chris Moody. Chris, thanks so much for being here. Chris is an active member of MAMA, which stands for Mothers Against Media Addiction, but of course the organization is for any parent that really wants to be mindful about how their child interacts with technology. So Chris, let's talk a little bit about that, and let's start by describing the mission of the group Mama.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the mission is clear. We want kids to be able to enjoy being kids, you know, not glued to a screen, but to be able to have real life experiences. And, you know, so much of that I think resonates with parents nowadays because we lived a very different life than the kids today. You see kids with phones, you see kids with iPads, all kinds of screens. And even as parents, the first thing that we do is tend to give them those devices, right? They've become babysitters from a very early age.
As a convenience for us, right?
Exactly. So I think at this point, Mama exists to be an outlet for parents to come together and say, you know what, I don't have to feel guilty for this. We need to figure out the best way forward for our kids to not just have to be able to have that device in their hands. And it's really not a good thing or a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. There's no judgment here. It's not anti-tech, or there's a lot of good uses for technology. But, you know, when we look at how these devices evolve and how kids age and how patterns develop, it's really becomes into play how they're used. And so that's where Mama really exists.
Now you have 2 children.
I do.
A boy and a girl.
Yes.
You heard me earlier say how I remember my dad spoke to us differently. Do you talk to your children differently?
Yeah, I mean, look, like the other night we had a family movie night, right? And the kids, both my daughter is 7, my son is 10. They saw a phone, a landline phone, and they said, what is that?
What is that?
What is that? And so, you know, that showed me right there the evolution of where we've come with communications in what doesn't seem like that long ago, right? So I would say, you know, in terms of how we talk differently to them, you know, there's a 3-year age gap, there's a boy and a girl, but I think in terms of my son in particular, you know, he's starting to gravitate more towards friend conversations, and can I talk to my friends on my iPad and FaceTime? And so with that, we try, my wife and myself, try to get forth that message that whatever you put out in that space is there forever, right? And I think that's a very important thing, because you see it now with athletes that develop into professional athletes, and people race through and find something they wrote when they were 13 on a social media board.
We have reminders on Facebook all the time, right? They pop up for memories.
Exactly. So yes, and you can't wait to delete them, because it's embarrassing that you did that so many years ago. Now you look at the kids and you try to educate them the best you can to let's not get into trouble like that.
Right. Well, talk about the role that you see dads playing when it comes to the organization with Mama, when it comes to keeping kids safe online, and these fathers have to talk to their sons, let's say, and when it comes to emotions and talking about those things, how do you talk to your son about emotions?
Right. And that's where I can see the difference between a boy and a girl, right? I coach soccer as well. Boys are a little more hardened and they don't open up as much, where girls will tell you anything and everything about their life, right? So I think in terms of that, when I look at my son, I try to connect deeply with him. You know, I have a friend, which is actually what drew me into this group, a close friend that I grew up with, who told me that, he said, watch out for when your kids become teenagers, because social media is just horrific in that age range. And I asked him more about that. What do you mean? And he teared up, right? And he said, you know, my daughter gets bullied relentlessly. She doesn't want to be in front of her friends. She's in front of other people that think of her in this way. They put pictures up of her that bring shame upon her. And, you know, he's like, she's a sweet kid. She's my daughter. I think of her as my little girl, right? So I think in terms of stories like that, being able to share things that will connect with your kids, especially with my son, to say, hey, let's look at, you know, other things that I know that have happened. Would you want to feel that way? And of course their answer is no, right? So it can't just be the generic, don't do this, don't do that. The more you tell kids not to do something, usually the more they want to do it. So you have to tell a compelling story.
Build empathy.
Exactly, that takes it away.
Okay. Well, Chris, we appreciate you being here with us. Really quick, if you can mention, for folks who perhaps want to get involved with Mama, how can they do that?
Sure. So they can go to joinmama.org. The other thing I'll mention with that is that At first, when I heard the acronym Mothers Against Media Addiction, I thought, oh, maybe I'm not to be involved, right? And then I went to a meeting and learned from speakers and the different engagements that they put on in the community and with schools that, no, this is open to mothers, fathers, grandparents, people that are close to the kids, people that want to make a difference. People tend to conform in areas like this, right? So if everyone can buy into avoiding social media till a later age, no phones in schools, it's more effective as a group.
And there's plenty of dads that belong to this group.
Absolutely.
All right, Chris Moody, thank you again for being here with us. On the Record, we'll be right back. Thank you for making us part of your morning. As always, we encourage you to be part of our discussion each and every Sunday right here at 10 a.m. We'll see you again next Sunday.